This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Good morning again. This is our 17th session of Wandering Through the Big Book, and we're painstakingly making our way through We Agnostics. We seem to get about a page or two done each time, and we've gotten all the way up to page 48, and where we left off last time was the paragraph that starts with, the reader may ask himself why he should believe in a power greater than himself. And before the meeting, Anne Marie was mentioning that she got this book, and it's a great little book, the Annotated AA Handbook. And it has these great lists, and they're in the study guide for step 2 that talk about it's 4 different lists. The first one is attitudes that hinder our progress. Second one is objections addressed. So they're addressing these attitudes that hinder our progress. Number 3 is called reasons to believe, and number 4 is called directions for making a beginning. And they're just really good. A really good way to review the chapter. They've got a citation and the line that they're talking about. And so this paragraph is starting with this idea of the reasons to believe. Why, if they start off, the chapter starts off with all the problems in our way, all the reasons we're agnostic. We can't reconcile the human calamity with this notion that everything is okay, that there is a spiritual reality that we can tap into behind the human calamity of bodies and minds basically causing each other difficulty. So this paragraph that starts off with why should we believe, and then it ends with this question that we left off with last time, and I asked you to think about it. What are your reasonable assumptions as a starting point? And I just personally feel like this has become super important to me, that when I am clear about my primary purpose, whether it's in a meeting or in an interaction with another person, or when I'm getting up in the morning or whatever, when I'm clear about my primary purpose, things really can't go wrong, because I'm just trying to do the best I can, and whatever happens is okay. So this notion, I'm trying to make an equation between my reasonable assumptions as a starting point and primary purpose. And we'll be talking more about that as we go along. So I'm going to read from the book, but I'm hoping we're going to get to this thing. And I tried to suggest how you could find this thing in the study guide. This is something in the study guide for step 1, which happens to be PDF number 2. And it's called The Turning Point, Avoid and Seek Your Only 2 Alternatives. And it really plays off of that reading that we did that says, it was reading number 3 that Anne Marie read. If you're as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe you only got 2 alternatives. And you know, it says this throughout the book. It's just the alternatives change, but they're basically what I believe the Jesuits are talking about when they say you're either in sync with God and you're experiencing the results of that, or you're out of sync with God. Those are the 2 alternatives, and what we experience will be a result of that. This one says, if you're as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe you only got 2 options. One is keep doing what you're doing, go on to the bitter end, trying to blot out of your mind how wretched your life really is. And the other, it says to accept spiritual help. We've added in another line from the end of step 9, which says the other alternative is to ask our Creator each morning in meditation. That's very specific. Each morning in meditation, to show us the way as we're considering our plans for the day. You know, step 11 says we ask God to direct our thinking, and we especially ask that our thinking be divorced from all the ego BS that we're normally involved with. This is saying the same thing, just another way. We ask our Creator each morning in meditation to show us the way, because I'm not going to figure it out. This is a big, at least for me, this is a really big deal. This takes me figuring it out. It takes it out of my possibilities. I'm not going to figure it out. My human life is based on human power, which tends to be mental power, physical power, and I make everything about me. So one alternative is make everything about me, and the other alternative is ask my Creator, how can I best serve thee? Which is the question at the end of step 10. So, at any rate, I hope we're going to get to that. And so I'm going to start reading through this stuff. And just another thought before we begin here. I think the two major challenges of any time we try to help another through this process, the two major challenges are informational. We're trying to share information, and we're trying to share information that's in this book and try to take the other person to their own experience of what the writers of the book are saying. And a number of times we talked about this idea of you read a statement in the book, it's implied, I guess, they don't say it directly. This is a statement of truth of the people that wrote the book. An example for me that I've always struggled with is on page 68, the fear page. They say, we are in this world to play the role God assigns. I'm to take that statement, turn it into a question, and ask myself, am I in this world to play the role God assigns? And of course, my answer is, hell no. I'm in charge of my role here. I'm not asking God, what role have you assigned me here? But then once you've done that, then you can ask the next question, which is, well, do I want this to be my experience? Do I want to match the human calamity with serenity? They're saying just to the extent that they do this, that they humbly rely on God and they behave the way they think God wants us to behave, that they experience serenity right smack dab in the middle of the calamity. Do I want that to be my experience? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then stop reading the book. Go away, go do something else. If the answer is yes, then the next question is, well, am I willing to do what they said they did to get to this experience? And again, and if the answer is yes, I do want to do it. I do want this experience, and I do want to. I've messed this up a little bit. Next question is, do I want it? Yes. Next question is, am I willing to do what they said they did? And oftentimes the question is no, because the problem is willingness, because doing it is going to make us uncomfortable, and we don't want to do it. We'd all rather be comfortable than uncomfortable. So then if my question is, well, I want what they say they have, I would like to meet the calamity with serenity, but I'm not willing to do all this stuff, particularly all this prayer stuff. That's where so many of us, in spite of the importance of prayer, as the prayer is the circle, the triangle, unity, recovery, service, that's the meetings, that's the one-on-one work, that's the service commitments where we're trying to focus on something other than our self-centered selves. But that circle, that's prayer and meditation. That's encapsulating the whole thing. And many of us are just plain unwilling to try prayer. I know for me, it was until I had an experience of prayer actually working. I remember looking at my sponsor, you really do this prayer stuff? Like, it's always talking about prayer. Do you do this? And that's a big deal. So I'm losing my train of thought here. There goes. This is what happens when you get old. You get going pretty good, and then all of a sudden it's blue sky. Okay. Oh, yeah. I was back on the. So yes, I want to match calamity and serenity. No, I don't want to do what you did. In particular, I don't want to pray. You know. Then the question is, am I willing to pray for willingness? It's always the answer. It's through the book. You know, I want what you have, but I don't want to do what you did. So God, please make me willing. And then, of course, for me, it oftentimes starts with red light, green light. Do you really want me to do this step 4? Do you really want me to write a resentment list? I don't want to even think about my resentments. And if I get a green light, yeah, I do. This would be good work. This is part of self-examination, blah, blah, blah. Then Emmett Fox says you can claim the power. If you get a green light, then the part of the deal with God is if you ask me to do something and I agree to do it, you'll give me the power to do it. It's huge. So, all right, we're back on this paragraph. Everybody nowadays at the bottom of 48 believes in scores of assumptions for which there is good evidence. We can see the effects of it, but no perfect visual proof. And does not science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof? It is being constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world that outward appearances are not inward reality at all. To illustrate, and then he's going to go into this still gooder. What I was starting to say before I wandered off was the major challenges of sponsorship are 1, information, and 2, motivation. And that's why I went through that whole thing. And so what I'm really trying to say is we're going very slowly through We Agnostics. We're probably going to take, 6, 7, or 8 sessions to go through 15 pages or whatever it is. I think oftentimes we're all such eager beavers, we go into that 3rd step without slowly going through We Agnostics. It's just such rich food for thought to read these pages, these sentences, and talk about them, the sponsor and the person being sponsored, to talk about them. How do you feel about this? How do you react about this? Because what the job of a sponsor, I believe, is to try to take the information and match it up with the person's personal experience. It's not about my experience, it's about where do you come when you engage with this material, engage with this information. And then the purpose of the 2 alternatives motivationally is to try to get somebody to understand, you may think you've got a lot of choices. I don't think you do. For example, resentment or gratitude. Be annoyed with the world because you're not getting what you think you should be getting. Somebody's in your way in some kind of way, or gratitude that you're here. Gratitude to be able to live a human life. I think it shows up. The next thing we inventory is fear. There are all kinds of spiritual traditions that will say, you've only got 2 choices, love or fear. And the problem is we're powerless over our fear. So we can't get to love because we're too wound up in our fear, whatever that is. And then you get to remorse. I'm not sure I guess remorse, the opposite of remorse would be enthusiasm. Enthusiastic, Amy, you hear that? Instead of feeling badly about myself, I feel good. I feel enthusiastic to be here and be trying to do God's will for me. So, okay, the prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speeds. These bodies are governed by precise laws. These laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt it. I love this next. This is just so beautifully stated. Top of 49. When, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that underneath this material world and life as we see it, there is an all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence. Here we go, right there, our perverse streak comes to the surface and we laboriously set out to convince ourselves it isn't so. There is no God, or I have doubt about God. We read wordy books and indulge in windy arguments. I mean, how great is that? Thinking we believe this universe needs no God to explain it. Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere. Those are two alternatives. It's one or the other. I'm either claiming it's all coincidence, or I'm trying to allow for the truth that underneath everything that I see and experience is an all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence. And then the problem is, just like the guy at the end of this chapter is going to say, well, he hasn't done much for me lately. You know, there may be this thing here, but I'm sure not happy with my life. Hadn't done anything for me. But you can also ask yourself, how happy am I with the idea that life originates out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere? And if that's true, my primary purpose is just going to be to enjoy myself as much as I can. And I'm telling you, that's been my primary purpose till coming into Alcoholics Anonymous. Then I experienced years of confusion, and now my primary purpose becomes clearer every day. And it lines right up with what the Jesuits say, what St. Ignatius said: your primary purpose, Jack, is to love, honor, and serve your Creator, and thereby do the work that your soul came here to do. And I have no idea what that is. You know, I got a pretty good idea about my body and my mind, what it needs and likes and wants and fears and doesn't want, you know. But if you ask me the question, why is your soul here, which usually means, how does your soul need to grow as a spiritual entity having a human experience, which it has had many, many times before. You know, how we all say, this is not my first rodeo, you know, but I'm not sure why my soul is here and what it is to learn. Other than, I guess the major lesson that jumps out at me is, don't believe your own thinking, because I've been believing my own thinking all my life, which takes me right to this next paragraph, where they're going to set out two alternatives. It's one or the other. And just think about, where am I at in this? So instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, we agnostics and atheists choose to believe. I'm not sure I get a choice. I think I want to think I have a choice. I think I'm powerless over my thinking. Choose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and end of all. And then they insult us. Or they insult themselves. Rather vain of us, wasn't it? I would have said, rather vain of you, isn't it? You know, they're just so, well. So I like to restate this and do it personally. Rather than regarding myself as an intelligent agent of my Creator, part of the evolution of spiritual consciousness. That's what I believe my soul is, not my human consciousness. You know, that's a temporary phenomenon. It started and it's going to stop. But my soul is different. My soul has my soul has an eternal point of view, and has been through this calamity many, many times. Rather than consider myself an agent of my Creator, I choose to believe my own thinking. I choose to get my perspective on my life from my own mind, as the education system and my society has trained it. And then they say, vain. That's rather vain of you. It's both narcissistic and it's futile. I love this line. And those are the two alternatives. A lot of times we'll break this thing down. I know you've heard pause, ask and listen, do, 4 words. Step 10 is the pause. Step 11 is the asking and listening. Step 12 is the doing. But another format comes before the 3rd step prayer. First of all, quit playing God. 1, quit playing God. 2, invite God in. And it's suggested to us that we invite God in as our director and we're the actor, if you're into personal drama, as our principal and we're the agent, if you're into the business of the world. And that's what this one is talking about, agent, or parent and child. God is the parent and me is the child of a loving parent. That's how we invite God in. And then step 3, do as you're directed to do. And that reading we did earlier promises that if I will do that, if I will quit playing God, I will invite God in and I will do as God directs me to do. I will be enabled. Lack of power won't be my dilemma. I will be enabled to match the human calamity with spiritual serenity of my soul, which knows everything is okay right here, right now, in spite of the calamity, in spite of human selfishness, in spite of human destructiveness, in spite of greed, dishonesty, all that stuff. And I love this next paragraph. We who have traveled this dubious path beg you, beg you to lay aside prejudice. This is one of the things given for the set-aside prayer. God, please set aside everything I think I know because I'm believing my own thinking and I'm miserable. Set aside everything I think I know so I can have an open mind and a new experience. We who have traveled this dubious path beg you to lay aside prejudice even against organized religion. What a tall order that is for most of us. We've seen the hypocrisy of it, and we use the hypocrisy to throw out the whole thing. And yet that reading does say it's be quick to see where they're right, not be quick to see where they're wrong. What Silkworth say, I advise every alcoholic to read this book through. And though perhaps you came to practice contempt prior to investigation, you will remain to pray, the number 1 ingredient of us recovering from the disease of alcoholism, which you really could say is the disease of agnosticism manifesting as alcoholism, as opposed to some other way that agnosticism could manifest. Beg of you to lay aside prejudice even against organized religion. We have learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. It gives people what the word they use, a primary assumption to begin with. What did it say? A reasonable assumption as a starting point. I am created by a loving God. That's what I want to be my reasonable assumption as a starting point, instead of I am created by 2 highly dysfunctional alcoholic parents who could not teach me the truth about life because they didn't know it themselves. And it took me 60 years to get to Alcoholics Anonymous because I was believing my own thinking. 60 frickin' years. Sure. Let's see. People of faith have a logical idea of what life is all about. Actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatever. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices when we might have observed that many spiritually minded persons of all races, colors, and creeds were demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness which we should have sought ourselves. Was I demonstrating stability? No. Happiness? No. Usefulness? Sometimes, sort of. That's what we're being offered. Okay, wow, got to page 50. Instead, we looked at the human defects of these people and sometimes used their shortcomings as a basis of wholesale condemnation. Here's contempt prior to investigation. We talked of intolerance while we were intolerant ourselves. I always love that. Somebody gets all enraged about somebody else's behavior and they're being intolerant while they're accusing the other person of being intolerant. We missed the reality and beauty of the forest because we were diverted by the ugliness of some of its trees. For me, it was always hypocrisy. I still remember a moment being in church at 10, 11 years old and hearing my mind say, this is BS. These people they're reading this stuff, but they ain't doing this stuff. And then my mind said those awful words, trust me, I'll get us out of here. And I tried hard. It took me 60 years. It blows my mind because I wanted to think I was smart, smart and capable, and my self-reliance can do the job. Let's see. Oh, I love in our personal stories, you will find a wide variation in the way each teller approaches and conceives of the power which is greater than himself. Whether we agree with a particular approach or conception seems to make little difference. What I love is how undogmatic they are, which is a mistake that I think organized religion makes. This book is constantly saying, we don't care. We're not trying to impose our experience on you. You have to have your own experience or it won't work. It will only work if you can have your own experience and discover for yourself whether the book is true or not true. And that's why people suggest you start with the assumption that they know what they're talking about. This is the truth of their experience. There is not a lie in the book. And why when people start experiencing the promises, it is such a inspirational and motivational event. Oh my God. I'm miserable, but I'm not thinking about drinking. Oh. Or the promise that my awareness of the presence of God will become the most important fact of my life. And maybe one day I'll get to walking hand in hand on the broad highway with the spirit of the universe. That's what I want. Let's see. In our personal stories, wide variation, each teller approaches and conceives of the power which is greater than himself. Whether we agree doesn't make any difference. Experience has taught us that these are matters about which for our purpose we need not be worried. They are questions for each individual to settle for himself. On one proposition, however, these men and women are strikingly agreed. Every one of them has gained access to and believes in a power greater than himself or herself. This power has in each case accomplished the miraculous, the humanly impossible. As a celebrated American statesman put it, let's look at the record. So, that's the thing where you realize sooner or later, I am not thinking about drinking, and that's a miracle, because that's all I thought about for X number of years. And I not only recognize it as a miracle, I recognize that I didn't do it. I didn't remove this obsession with the relief that I got from alcohol. And then a wonderful paragraph. Here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed, they flatly declare. Flatly means not charismatically, not over enthusiastically. Flatly declare, matter of factly, that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take a certain attitude toward that power and to do certain simple things, there has been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. In the face of collapse of despair, in the face of the total failure of their human resources, their minds and their bodies, they found that a new power, a new peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowed into them. This happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. So my sponsor was always a bugger about every time they said something like this, to do certain simple things. What are those certain simple things? You know, when it comes out down to what the old timers would call the 5 things. Pray in the morning to be kept away from a drink or a drug today. Say thank you in the evening for whatever happened that day. And then read a few pages of the book, go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and have some one-on-one contact with another alcoholic, the 5 things. 2 of them are prayer. You could say, if you go to the 3 sides of the triangle and inside the circle, that you go to meetings, the unity side of the triangle, you do some one-on-one contact, the recovery side of the triangle, one-on-one contact in the book, and service. You have service commitments, all surrounded by this circle of prayer and meditation. And what about that attitude? You know, since we come to believe that's step 2, we take a certain attitude. Well, that's step 3. That our attitude is we're going to quit playing God, we're going to invite God in, and we're going to do as directed. There has been a revolutionary change. I don't think there's anybody here this morning in this Zoom call that will not recognize how different their life is today. I don't know how far back you need to go, but how different your life is today from the way it was. We're revolutionaries. I mean, it is a revolutionary thing. It's a whole different way of being. This happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. And I think those requirements, you can liken it to the ABCs in how it works. Requirement that I admit the failure of my self-reliance. The requirement that I turn to a power greater than my mind and my body. And that I do as I'm directed to do as a result of prayer and meditation and service. Okay, so we're turning from 50 to 51. Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going of life. And then I love this. Leaving aside the drink question. You know, this is where you hear a speaker say, I didn't have trouble when I was drinking. I had trouble when I was sober. You know, I don't have trouble with my drinking, but not, it's different for all of us. But leaving aside the drink question, now we're sober. They tell why living was so unsatisfactory. Because I don't have meaning and purpose. Because I'm still overwhelmed by my resentment and my fear, as opposed to gratitude and love. When many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of their life, they present a powerful reason why one should have faith. So I heard a sponsor talking one time about playing off of this passage. Take a piece of paper and write down the most important facts of your life. And at some point, draw a line when the presence of God shows up. Draw a line and put the presence of God is the most important fact of my life. And then look at that list each day and pray to your higher power to try to move that line up. It's just an interesting prayer technique. I hope I've explained it okay. So you write down all the important facts of your life, draw a line. The presence of God is the most important fact of my life, and then just try to move that line up. Try to move the most important facts of your life down underneath the presence of God in my life. Just an idea to throw at you. Okay, so we're gonna stop there, and I just want to run through this two alternatives and encourage you. If you're having trouble finding it, let me know, and I'll send again where to find this. So this is in the study guide for step 1, and it's pages 11 and 12 of that study guide, and it's called number 5 because there's it's a kind of a table of contents at the beginning of each one, and this is called the turning point: avoid and seek your only 2 alternatives. So this started out as it's a great question to ask and be clear yourself. On pages 67 is about resentment, 68 is about fear, 69 is about sex conduct. And on each page, they say, this is what you are to avoid or not do. And they say, this is what you are to do, what you are to seek. So working backward, on the sex page, it says, we are not to judge. We are not to be the arbiters of another person's contact. What it says to me is, I am not to judge your behavior, sexual or otherwise. I am not to judge you. And then instead, it's farther down the page, it says, instead, we ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. This is the essence of step 11. That's what we're doing in step 11. Praying only for knowledge of what you want me doing and give me the power to carry that out. It's really, and it's, I'm much more aware today of, I want to be the person my creator wants me to be, not the person I want me to be. It's been a nice shift for me because it takes, I don't have to decide what I want to be. I have to ask, what do you want me to be? So backing up, page 68, the fear page says, we never apologize for God. Well, that's huge. I mean, I believe we all apologize for God in different ways. I do it through my perfectionism. I do it through my resentment in a way. I do it through any time I'm saying this should not be the way it is, which is a very, that's me saying to the world, you shouldn't be this way. I mean, I'm right, of course. It shouldn't be this way, but it's not, but that's playing God. And then it says, instead, we let God demonstrate through us what God can do. So that's telling me those are my only 2 alternatives. Apologize for God in whatever way I apologize for God, or let God demonstrate through me what God can do. That's it. That's the range of my choices. And I'm trying to say that the more you can make yourself or a person that you're working with aware of this, well, because you'll hear them declaring what choice they're in. And then you can point out, well, that's one alternative. Here's the other alternative. How would you like to experience that? The resentment page says we avoid retaliation or argument, and it gives us a reason why. We avoid retaliation or argument because they do not work. They are not helpful in the end. Now you can question that. Well, I think it's helpful. I saw a person behave better after I argued with them about something, maybe. I'm not going to say it's not, but that's saying we avoid retaliation or argument, and instead We seek a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. That's the part that if it just said a kindly and tolerant view, I would have been okay. But a kindly of each and every one, I can't, it's Putin today. It used to be Hitler, but it's Putin today. I just do not understand it. I really don't. And yet this is saying I am to have a kindly and tolerant. That's hard, really hard. And yet that line says, we ask our Creator each morning to show us the way of patience and tolerance and kindness and love. Any rate, so this is a whole bunch of these things, starting with the doctor's opinion. So it starts with 3 statements that are saying, on page 58 in How It Works, we stood at the turning point. We asked God's protection and care with complete abandon. So it's not really saying your other alternative. I guess the other alternative is keep believing you're thinking and doing what you're doing. But this is saying your other option is to ask God's protection and care with complete abandon. From page 25, the one we read, if you're as seriously alcoholic as we were, there's no middle of the road. Go on to the bitter end or accept spiritual help. And I think this whole book after page 25 is how to accept spiritual help. Right after the ABCs and How It Works, it says, just what do we mean? We make a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understand God. People all the time are, well, how do I know what's God's will for me and what's not? And the answer is do the steps and you'll find out. The line is just what do we mean by this and just what do we do? And then they launch into the instructions for a 3rd step decision and doing 4 through 9 after that. That's what we mean. That's what we do. It's always about understanding and action, those 2 components of our human experience. So anyway, this starts off with avoid and seek. And from the doctor's opinion, here are 2 choices: alcoholic torture or abstinence. Those are the 2 choices. Self-centered selfishness or altruistic service. Those are the 2 choices. Coming to scoff, remaining to pray. I love that one. Yeah, hold on to your contempt prior to investigation as long as you can, or ask God to set aside everything you think you know about the situation and give you a kindly and tolerant view. On page 30, that's why I was hoping you could print this, because then you don't have to, or you'll see all this stuff. The delusion that we are like other people, as opposed to conceding to our innermost selves that we were alcoholic. One alternative, the desperate experiment of the first drink. Other alternative, praying to be kept away from a drink. Jim the car salesman. Suddenly the thought crossed my mind. Believing your own thinking, that if you put whiskey in milk, you'll be okay. Other alternative, I vaguely sensed I wasn't being any too smart. That's conscious contact. He's getting a little nudge from his soul that, no, Jim, please don't. Please don't put whiskey in the milk. Page 45, lack of power. I'm suffering from lack of power. Alternative, finding a power by which we could live. 49 we read this morning. Suddenly, believing your own thinking, being your creator's intelligent agent. Page 52, we were having trouble with personal relationships, and from the promises, lose interest in selfish things, gain interest in our fellows. There'll be a whole thing coming up about matching the bedevilments with the 9th step promises. Page 55, we haven't gotten to this one, so I guess I'll stop at this one. Pomp, calamity, pomp, worship of other things, as opposed to the fundamental idea of God deep within. We'll get to that next week. Okay, I'm going to ring this gong and stop the recording, and we'll have some open discussion, and I appreciate you all being here, and I hope I'll see you next week.